Congressman Jay Obernolte, and we are live from my office in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for joining my live virtual town hall. We hold these town halls periodically to make sure that I hear directly from you about the issues that are affecting our community. So I'll give you a few minutes update on the things that are going on in Washington and what I've been working on. But the majority of this town hall I want to devote to answering questions from constituents. So let me tell you how that works. It's kind of like a radio talk show. So at any time during this town hall, you can press *3 on your touch-tone phone, and you'll be connected to one of my field representatives who will take your information and put you in the queue to ask a question. So *3 at any time, including right now. And also at any time, you can press *6 starting right now, and one of my representatives will take your information to sign you up for our newsletter. That's really the best way of keeping in touch with me and following the work that we're doing on behalf of California's 23rd Congressional District. So again, *3 anytime to ask a question, *6 at any time to subscribe to my newsletter. Again, if you're just joining us, it's Congressman Jay Obernolte.
The Access Live event operator has been notified that you wish to ask a question.
Going on within the 23rd Congressional District. If you're listening to this and you want to see video, we're also live streaming this on Facebook. You can go to my website also at in case you don't have the spelling of my last name, it's obernolte.house.gov/live, and you can watch the video of our virtual town hall. So first thing I want to talk about is something that is going on in our district that I find very concerning. BNSF Railway is one of the major employers in our district. They operate rail lines throughout California's 23rd district and in fact across the nation. They're a vital part of our nation's freight infrastructure. Several years ago, we were all extremely excited when BNSF announced a new project in Barstow. It's called the Barstow International Gateway. And what it is an intermodal transport facility where container ships from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, instead of having their containers loaded onto trucks and trucked out of the ports, which adds to the congestion there, they'll be put on rail cars and taken by rail out to the intermodal facility in Barstow, where they'll be transferred to either other rail cars going throughout the country or onto trucks for delivery to their final destination. The reason why this is a big win is because the ports of Long Beach and the ports of Los Angeles are already at capacity when it comes to their ability to get containers in and out of the port by truck. I mean, there's no way of doing more freight through those facilities with the existing road structure and the truck infrastructure that we have. So this is going to allow us to expand the use of those ports. It's also going to be good for the environment because it costs about 10 times as much energy to move a ton of freight via a truck than it costs to move it via rail. And that use of energy translates into greenhouse gas emissions that are bad for the planet and the costs, which are bad for consumers. So this will dramatically lower the cost of getting the freights out of their ports. That's good for everyone. It's also great for our congressional district, and it's great for the city of Barstow. The BNSF Railway estimates that they're going to invest about $1.5 billion, billion with a B, in the city of Barstow and the surrounding community, and that's going to catalyze economic development of all sorts. And I know my constituents in Barstow will appreciate when I say that Barstow is a community that desperately needs that investment. So this was all going extremely well until several months ago, when the California Air Resources Board announced a new rule for the treatment of locomotives in the state of California. It's called the In-Use Locomotive Law. And what CARB is trying to do is to require every locomotive that operates within the state of California to be all electric by the year 2035. So after 2035, no more locomotives that are not electric would be allowed to operate within the state. So I think this is probably well-intentioned. I think they're trying to remove greenhouse gas emissions from the atmosphere. But unfortunately, here are the facts. There is not a current locomotive that is all electric that's capable of replacing a diesel locomotive. Currently, the best all-electric locomotives store about 5 to 10 megawatt hours of energy. Whereas a diesel locomotive stores about 80 to 100 megawatts of energy. You just can't put enough batteries in the form factor of a locomotive to replace a diesel locomotive. So lower energy storage will work for things like a passenger locomotive, and that's why you're seeing some of the trains on the Metrolink, if you're familiar, running throughout.
Hi, this is Connor from Jay Obernolte office. Can I please have your first name, where you're coming from?
My name was Michael.
And where are you from, Michael?
Hesperia.
And what's your question for the congressman?
I had brought a letter to his office on January the 9th, and I haven't heard anything about it.
Okay. What was your letter about?
My letter was about several different issues. First of all, why do you guys have a letter? When I asked this question the first time to an individual a month ago, and what was his name? Just give me a second.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just put this, the last page of the letter I wrote, which was page 7 of 7. It's stating his stance on reparations and my stance on reparations and why he won't even consider it.
So you're for reparations, and you asked Congressman what his stance is on reparations?
That's page 7 of 7 of the document that your office got on 1/9/2024.
Okay, sir. Well, I'll put your question here and your statement you're talking about, and I'll return to the call. And if you hear Michael from Hesperia, that means you're live on the call with the Congressman. You can ask him the question then.
Okay. All right.
All right. I will return to the call now.
Powered vehicles in the state of California by the mid-2030s, and we've talked about why I believe that that's a bad idea. It's not that I'm against electric vehicles. I just believe that families ought to be empowered to make their own decisions on what vehicles are right for them and their families. And in some cases, that will be an electric vehicle. In some cases, it won't. I think that being Americans means we should have the freedom to make that economic choice for ourselves. So when CARB persisted and the EPA suggested that they were going to approve that waiver, last year I introduced a bill directing the EPA to deny that waiver, and I'm really proud to announce that just a few weeks ago that bill passed the floor of the House of Representatives. So we will do exactly that same thing if the EPA comes back and decides that they are going to grant the waiver. I hope they won't, but if they do, we're going to be prepared to keep fighting because, first of all, the community of Barstow desperately needs this investment. But more in a global sense, this just makes a lot more sense for not only the people of California, but for the climate. It makes no sense to spend 10 times as much energy putting freight on trucks than putting them on the locomotives. So we're going to keep fighting that fight. So that brings us to our first poll. And this is something that you can participate in with your touchtone phone. The question is, should the EPA grant a waiver to CARB for its job-killing in-use locomotive rule? So press 1 if you think it should grant the waiver and allow CARB to phase out the use of diesel locomotives and require electric locomotives. Press 2 if you think no, you think the EPA should deny the waiver and allow the facility to be built in Barstow, and press 3 if you're unsure. So again, the question is, should the EPA grant a waiver to CARB for the in-use locomotive rule? Press 1 if yes, you think it should grant the waiver, and 2 if you think no, it should deny the waiver, or 3 if you are unsure. And we will collect the results of this, and
Your response has been registered.
Results of the poll on Monday when we get our next newsletter edition. Just to remind you here, if you have a question for me, we're going to be going to questions in just a couple minutes here. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, please press *3 and you'll be put in the queue to ask questions. *3 at any time, starting right now, or press *6 to subscribe to my newsletter. And if you subscribe, you'll get the results of this poll on Monday. Another thing I wanted to talk about is something I've been deeply engaged on in the House of Representatives. That is the subject of artificial intelligence. I think most of you know that my master's degree is in artificial intelligence, and that my ambition in life was to be a researcher in AI when I was young. I kind of got deflected out of that into a career in business, but when I was at Caltech and UCLA working on AI research, I did some of the very early research on natural language processing and computer vision, and that was 30 years ago. That activity has continued to build, and now AI seems very clearly poised to have a major impact on our economy and our society, hopefully for the better. However, it's very clear that AI also has some large potential downsides. I'm talking about things like the potential to spread mis and disinformation. I'm talking about the harm that AI can do in the hands of some of our adversaries in terms of the creation of biological nuclear weapons, the creation of radiological weapons, and also the way that AI can be used to pierce through digital data privacy and engage in activities like cyber fraud and cyber theft. So these are things that we have to guard against, and I have been leading the efforts in Congress to enact some regulation around AI that will allow the positive benefits of AI to occur while still mitigating the negative consequences. And that's a delicate balance, but I'm convinced that we can achieve it. So I've been pushing for this for the last 4 years, and I'm very happy to announce later this year our new House Task Force on Artificial Intelligence was created, and I was very honored to be asked to be the chairman of that task force. So we have 24 bipartisan members of the task force. We have a wide variety of really smart, dedicated people from across the whole spectrum of policy committees in the House of Representatives, and we have been tasked with coming up with, by the end of the year, a federal regulatory structure for AI. So we've been hard at work at that the last couple of months. We just had our 4th task force meeting, and we just in fact had our 3rd roundtable yesterday in the task force. So I'm taking this responsibility very seriously, and in high hopes that we will achieve our goal of crafting a structure that simultaneously enables the benefits that AI can bring while also protecting our consumers from the harms. And that brings me to our second poll. And let me bring this up here. I'd like to ask your opinions about artificial intelligence, because I know it's been in the news a lot, and I'm sure that you have an opinion about it. So if you think that AI can be a force for good and for catalyzing economic growth in our country, just press 1 right now. If you believe that AI has too many potential negative consequences and should be restricted, press 2. If you think it's too early to decide, press 3. So press 1 if you think you're an AI optimist, and you think AI will be good for our society. 2 if you think AI will be bad, and 3 if you think it's too early to make that decision. And again, we will report the results of the poll to you when we issue our newsletter on Monday. Again,
Your response has been registered.
this is our virtual town hall. We will be going just in a couple minutes here to questions and answers. It's the most important part of the town hall, and frankly, the one that I always look forward to. You can press *3 at any time, including right now, if you have a question for me, and you'll be put in queue to ask that question. So *3 at any time on your touch-tone phone. Or if you want to subscribe to my newsletter and keep up with what I'm doing on your behalf in Washington, D.C., please press *6 at any time, including right now. The last thing that I want to talk about this evening is something that I talk about quite often because it is so important to me, and that is our national deficit and our national debt. And I have some very unfortunate and alarming statistics to report to you this evening. Our national debt just recently passed $35 trillion with a T. That is an almost unimaginably large amount of money. It's a historically large amount of money. If you do the math, that represents about $103,000 for every American man, woman, and child. Last time we had this talk a few months ago, it was a little bit over 100,000. It's now over $103,000 of debt for each one of us Americans. And unfortunately, it is continuing to get worse, and it will get worse until Congress takes action to stop borrowing so much money, to balance our federal budget, and then over time, finally, to start paying down our national debt. This last year alone, the federal government rang up about $1.3 trillion of deficit. That's almost 30% of all federal spending we had to borrow to spend. And with rising interest rates, that's a particular problem because we will spend almost as much this year just on interest on the existing debt as we do on the entire Department of Defense budget. So let me say that again. We will spend as much on interest this year on the debt we have as we have as we spend on defending our country. I hope that alarms you as much as it alarms me. The international community is starting to take notice of this, and just several days ago, the International Monetary Fund put out its semi-annual World Economic Outlook. And in that outlook, they kind of create a forecast for the economies of all of the countries of the world. And they kind of rang the alarm bells and said that the United States is spending so much in deficit that it is not only out of line with long-term fiscal stability, that's just the words they used, but it also threatens the economies of all of the other countries in the world because the United States represents such a large part of the world economy. So they are ringing the alarm bells loud and clear. These are the same alarm bells that we have been ringing here in the House, and I'm in desperate hopes that we will start to reduce our spending. We got a little bit of good news. Just in the last couple of months, we passed the appropriations bills for the current fiscal year. That represents the largest reduction in non-defense spending in the history of our country, but unfortunately it still does not put us on a path towards fiscal stability. So it's really going to take doing, in my opinion, two different things. Both of them are things that I've introduced legislation on. First, I think that we need to go through every single federal program looking for waste and for programs that are no longer meeting their intended purpose. This is the same thing that we did after World War II, the last time that our deficit was this big. And it was only this big in terms of a percentage of our GDP. It's many times higher in terms of dollars now. But the last time things were this bad, we had just emerged from a world war that was an existential crisis for our country. We'd gone deep into debt to finance that war, and Congress recognized that something needed to be done. And so they implemented something that they called an anti-appropriations committee that went through every single federal program looking for things that could be scaled down or eliminated. And you know what? It worked. Within 2 years, they had the federal budget balanced. So I have introduced a bill that institute something that I call the Finding Federal Savings Commission that would do exactly what they did after World War II and go through every program in federal government looking for things that were no longer needed or no longer working and recommending those things for elimination. And we tried to do it in a very thoughtful way. We introduced legislation that, as we say in the House, is highly privileged, which means that it can't be amended, and it must be brought for an up or down floor vote. And that's important because that's how good spending bills die in the House, is that someone introduces one, it implements good savings, but then it goes into a committee and it gets amended by people that want to spend more here and spend more there, and take a little off here, and take a little off there, and by the time it actually gets passed, the savings that it implements are minimal. We can't allow that to happen again. And I also think that long term, we need a balanced budget amendment to the federal Constitution. I think that Congress has proven that it is incapable of balancing the budget on a regular basis. I think that therefore, only in fiscal emergencies should the federal government be allowed to run a deficit. That's the way it works in those states. That's the way it works in the state of California. The state can wave its hands and rant and rave, but at the end of the day, the state budget has to be balanced. I think the federal budget has to be balanced as well, and that's why I introduced that legislation, and we're going to continue to push for that. So again, we're going to go here now to questions and answers. If you have a question for me, you can press *3 at any time. I'll be putting you to ask a question. And if you'd like to subscribe to my newsletter and you don't already subscribe, please press *6, and one of my representatives will come on the line to take your questions, and we'll get you signed up. One last thing that I wanted to mention before we go to questions and answers is the reason why you have a single representative to be your voice in federal government. You know, we have a really unique system in this country where we entrust representatives to represent us in our democracy. It's very unlike a lot of countries in Europe where you're voting for a party and then the party decides a group of people to represent you. We have a different system where we believe in having a representative assigned to every American. And the reason for that is so that you have a voice in your corner when you have a problem with your federal government. And if you're on this call listening, that voice is me. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I have a district office that's staffed with field representatives that have a true passion for solving problems for our constituents. And so I want to remind you that we're here, and that this is one of our primary responsibilities is to solve problems for you. So if you ever have a problem with any agency in federal government, please come to us and let us go to bat for you, because that's our job. In fact, I'll go a little bit further and say if you have a problem with any aspect of government, please call us first. I mean, sometimes people aren't really sophisticated about knowing whether the problem that they're having is a state problem, a county problem, a city problem, a local problem, or a federal problem. You know what, let us figure that out for you, and if we have to refer you somewhere else, we will call with you and make sure that your case is handed off, and we will call again and follow up a week later and make sure it got handled. We are highly successful at doing this. Just in the current Congress, we have successfully closed over 1,200 constituent case files. So 1,200 different problems just in our district for people just like you who had a problem and came to our office and we were able to fix it. If you are a veteran, we specialize in veterans cases. We are deeply passionate about defending our veterans with agencies like the Veterans Administration, with the various armed forces. We will go to bat for you. So if you are a veteran and you're having a problem, or you know of a veteran who's having a problem, please call us and let us get that fixed for you. I'll give you the number for my district office. It's 760-247-1815. Again, 760-247-1815. Or you can go to my website and fill out a form and tell us what your problem is, and we'll open the case file for you and get in touch with you. The website is obernolte.house.gov, obernolte.house.gov, and fill out that form, and we'll get you signed up electronically. Please, if you are having a problem, remember that we are here to fight for you, and that's our job. All right, so we're going to go now to questions and answers. Again, if you've got a question at any time here, starting now, you can press *3, and we'll take it. So we're going to go to first Noah from Hesperia. What can I answer for you, Noah?
Hi, I was wondering why we're sending money to other countries like Ukraine.
It's an excellent question and a very timely one, because just this week, in fact last Saturday, less than a week ago, the House passed and the Senate passed and the President signed a foreign aid package. I voted no on many of the different aspects of that package, and yes on some of them, and I'll walk you through what I voted on and why. To answer your global question, the argument for sending money to countries like Ukraine is a historical one. If you look at other occasions in world history where we've had authoritarian dictators who were bent on territorial aggression, you can see that it doesn't end well for democracies like ours unless we are willing to stand up and fight against them, because those territorial aggressive dictators just keep on going until they're stopped. And I think it's pretty clear that Vladimir Putin fits that definition. So if Putin, frankly, should have been stopped when he took Crimea, now he is attempting to take Ukraine. If he's not stopped there, next will be Moldova, next will be Estonia after that, and then probably Poland. And Poland, by the way, is a NATO ally. It's a NATO country. We would have Title V obligations under our NATO treaties with Poland, and that's World War III waiting to happen. So the argument for sending money to Ukraine is that it's a lot cheaper, both in terms of dollars and in terms of American lives, to do that now than it would be to fight later, 5 years from now, when Vladimir Putin is trying to invade a country that we're obligated to defend. Now, having said all of that, I voted against aid to Ukraine, and the reason is because I thought that the Biden administration was extremely dishonest when it negotiated this package. Last year, we agreed to the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which increased the debt ceiling in return for the largest reduction in federal spending, non-defense federal spending in the history of our country. So that's something that I supported. I supported it a little bit reluctantly because I wish the cuts were bigger, but it was a good step in the right direction. But not 2 months after that, the Biden administration turned around and asked for an extra $60 billion in aid to Ukraine. And I thought that that wasn't part of the deal. If that was a priority for them, they should have built that into the spending levels that we all had agreed to. And if that's the priority even now, we have $6 trillion of federal spending. Surely they can find $60 billion, and 1% of that to repurpose from some other federal program. So I thought that was a violation of the spirit of our agreement, which is why I voted against it. That's an excellent question. Thank you, Noah. Okay, we'll go next to Michael from Big Bear. Michael, what can I answer for you?
Here in Big Bear, we are really remote, and I saw something on the news about Biden requiring electric vehicles here in California, and I can't drive an electric vehicle everywhere because we're so remote. Can you tell me how we can stop this?
That's a great question, and we talked a little bit about it a few minutes ago when we were talking about the action that CARB is trying to take, the California Air Resources Board is trying to take against the diesel-powered locomotives in Barstow. But they also, as you pointed out, are trying to eliminate the sales, to outlaw the sales of any internal combustion engine vehicle and force all vehicles to be electric in just a few years from now. And again, I don't have anything against electric vehicles. I would drive one if I could, actually, but I live on the top of a mountain, as you do, and I can't, if my battery's topped off at the top of the mountain, I can't regenerate energy when I'm on a mountain, but I have to spend a bunch of energy going up, and so it doesn't work for the kind of driving that I do, and it doesn't work for the kind of driving that a lot of my constituents do. In one way or the other, EVs are expensive. I don't think that my constituents ought to be forced to buy them, and that's why I have been a leader in the fight against that mandate by the state of California. I had legislation that I introduced last year that passed a couple of months ago here in the House of Representatives that instructs the EPA to deny the waiver. The CARB needs to do that, and I'm going to continue to fight against that mandate because I feel like we all should have the freedom to make the best choices for our families. All right, again, we're going through questions here. We got lots of people in queue, which I'm happy to see. If you have a question for me, please press *3 and you'll be put in the queue to ask that question. And again, *6 at any time to subscribe to our newsletter. So we'll go next, Mary from Ukaipa. Mary, what can I answer for you?
Hi. Hello?
Hello, Mary.
Oh, how are you doing? I just want to tell you I'm a fan because I voted for you. But the other thing is, my big question was about the California Fair Act and how they're making practically the whole state of California a wildfire area, which they did with mine, and knowing that these three top insurers that left the state, Allstate, State Farm, and AAA, and they won't underwrite homeowners insurance anymore. And I don't think that's right because I don't live in the forest.
I completely agree with you, and this is an enormous problem, not just for the state of California, but for particularly our district. As you pointed out, there have been numerous of the largest property insurance companies in the state that have left the state of California and are canceling the majority of their policyholders in California. So I have thousands and thousands of constituents who have received notices of termination or non-renewal from their property insurance companies. And when they go to market, they are finding that if they can even get insurance, it's costing at least 2 times and sometimes as much as 3 or 4 times as much as they were paying before to get insurance. And many of my constituents can't get property insurance. and they are being forced to rely on what you pointed out, the California Fair Plan, which is really the property insurer of last resort. And if you talk to anyone who's on the Fair Plan, they will tell you, first of all, it is not inexpensive. It's very expensive insurance, and it is not comprehensive insurance. It only covers certain perils. And to have a really fully rounded insurance plan, you have to pair that with supplemental insurance that covers things like liability insurance, which the Fair Plan does not cover. So the Fair Plan is very expensive and still requires supplemental insurance. And here's the real problem. If you can't get property insurance within a community, the property market for houses in that community will die. Because the only people who will be essentially allowed to buy houses are the ones who can afford to pay cash for them. And anyone that needs, ordinary people that need to borrow the money via a mortgage are not going to be able to buy houses, because to get a mortgage you need to insure the property, and if you can't insure the property, you won't be able to get a loan. So this really has potential to devastate communities in our district, particularly the ones that are more wildfire prone. And the communities that are having the most trouble in getting property insurance are the communities in our mountain districts, places like Running Springs, Twin Peaks, Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead. Those are the places where we're seeing the most non-renewals, and our property markets are going to have lots of trouble and cease to function if we don't get this problem fixed. Unfortunately, this problem, like a lot of problems in our government, is one that is caused by actions of our government. The state of California for years has enacted very strict controls over property insurance rates in California, and because of that micro control of the insurance companies, that's why these insurance companies are pulling out. So this is yet another example where government has gotten too big, exerted too much bureaucracy, too much control, and therefore these property insurance companies are leaving. And it's something that needs to be fixed. I've been fighting for this, goodness, last 10 years. For the first 6 years I was in the state legislature. Now I work closely with our state assembly members and our state senators as they fight against this, and we're going to continue to fight. But, it's a huge problem, and I'm very aware of it. That's a great question. All right, we'll go now. Paul from Oak Hills. Paul, what can I answer for you?
Good evening, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. My concern is the property taxes I'm paying go down to the city of San Bernardino, and it appears nothing comes back up in the way of public service, road maintenance. Our roads are a third world condition. Our fire service is at a minimum level, on top of the $173 state tax that was added a couple of years back, or county tax rather. Police force is at a minimum. There's 2 deputies for a 56 square mile area. I want to know, the problem is you go to the supervisors meetings, you get 3 minutes to state your issues with no response, no answers. I've written to Supervisor Cook about this situation. If I don't get one of his assistants with an absurd response back to me, I hear nothing. And it's extremely frustrating. Our roads I got a dirt road next door to me that's just gutted 3 feet deep rut. The county says it's not their responsibility. People think their tax dollars are for that. And so where is our money going, and why is it not coming back to take care of the public?
Well, that is a great question, Paul, and I get that one all the time. Property taxes are one of the most visible of the taxes that we pay, and really the tax that we pay that we have the greatest expectations of, because it is specifically supposed to pay for the services that are rendered by government that are related to our property, and those are the things that you've outlined: fire protection, police protection, and the maintenance of basic infrastructure like things like roads and sewage treatment and water delivery. I have heard many times from constituents in San Bernardino County like you who are unhappy with the state of affairs there, and I am also very unhappy myself. One of the things I count myself as having been fortunate to do is to serve in local government. I didn't serve in county government, but I served on a city council and as mayor of the city before I became elected to the state legislature. And that gave me a direct voice in deciding where property tax revenue went, because when you have an incorporated city, the county takes some of the property tax revenue, but a lot of the property tax revenue goes to the city, and in return, the city is responsible for doing the things that you've outlined. The city is responsible for maintaining roads within the city limits. The city is responsible for providing fire protection, which is why residents in my district that live within incorporated cities don't pay the fire fee that you just rightfully complain about, because it's the city's responsibility to provide that service, not the county. And the cities are also responsible for providing the police protection. So, we had a debate in my congressional district a couple of years ago where a bunch of unincorporated territory, mostly the mountain communities surrounding Lake Arrowhead and Crestline and Running Springs, were considering incorporating into their own city. And my response to them was, go ahead and do it. I mean, and eventually they decided not to. They decided that the costs were going to go up because they were going to have to provide for city administration. But I think the big upside of that is that you get to make your own decisions as a community about where your property tax dollars go. You don't have to ship them down to the county and not have accountability. So I would encourage you to take a closer look at that, because it's something that I'm a big fan of, but I definitely share your frustration. All right, we're going to go from Dennis from Joshua Tree. Dennis, what can I answer for you?
Hey, I'm watching the government pretty close, so I keep up on stuff. And we've had close to 10 million illegals come over the border, and the army-aged men now outrank our military 6-1. With a follow-up on this, what are you doing to get these people out of California to no longer come into here? And also, what are you doing for our Second Amendment right that I can carry a gun and not have to worry about the concealed carry? Go back to the Second Amendment, because I'm really huge on gun rights. I have been in an armed robbery in a bank robbery, and I've been shot at in a restaurant. So I know that these things are real, and I want to be able to protect myself. But basically, I carry a gun in California, and I go to prison. I shoot it. I go to prison. We can't protect ourselves anymore.
Those are great questions. Let me start with your question about the border, which is a very important one and a very timely one. And this is another problem. We've been talking about problems that are 100% government caused, and the border crisis is also a problem that is 100% government caused. And I've been to the border several times over the last couple of years to see the problem firsthand and to talk to our Border Patrol agents firsthand to see, number one, how bad the problem actually is, and number two, what we need to do to fix it. And I can tell you, anything that you see on the news understates the severity of the problem. I mean, it is nothing short of an existential crisis for our country. And we have this problem under control. This is the tragedy. And unfortunately, when the current administration came in, they reversed a couple of the policies that the previous administration had enacted on border protection. They, first of all, reinstituted the policy of catch and release, which means that instead of detaining people that were caught crossing the border illegally, they would release them into communities on our side of the border. And they ended the policy of Remain in Mexico, which says that if you're applying for asylum, you have to do that at a checkpoint within the country that you're coming from. And if you're caught crossing the border illegally, you're not eligible for asylum anymore. You have to remain in Mexico while your asylum application is processed. And those policies alone would be enough to reduce the flow across our southern border by over 70%. That's what a Border Patrol agent told me a couple of months ago when I talked to him. I said, hey, what can we do? He said, Congressman, if all you did was bring back Remain in Mexico, our flow across the border would go down by over 70%. And I believe them; they're the experts. So it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy. And we continue to fight on this issue. Just yesterday, in fact, we passed out of the House of Representatives a notice of disapproval of President Biden's and the current administration's handling of the border crisis. Unfortunately, that's something we don't control the Senate, and the Senate doesn't see things the same way we do, and so This is something that's just going to persist until we keep pushing and we return to the policies that we know worked. But I mean, the tragedy is that the current administration does not need anything more from Congress to be able to stop this problem. They just have been unwilling to take the steps to do so, and we know what those steps are. So that's tragic. Going to your thoughts about the Second Amendment, I completely agree with you. I am a strong supporter of our Second Amendment rights. And as bad as things are, let me point out how fortunate we are to live in San Bernardino County, where we have a sheriff who shares our feelings about Americans' right to own a firearm and to use the firearm for their own self-defense. And we have a sheriff that has been really good about granting CCWs to people who apply for them and are willing to get the training necessary to hold them. And that is not true, folks, of a lot of different places in California. So we can be very thankful that Shannon Dicus is at the helm there of the Sheriff's Department, because he shares our feelings that that Second Amendment right is something that was given to us and should not be infringed. So we're going to keep fighting for that. Yeah, I will certainly still keep fighting for that as long as I represent you. All right, just to make sure everyone's aware, we got more questions in queue, which is great. We're going to keep taking questions here. We've got another few minutes, but if you have a question for me, you can press *3 at any time. You'll get put in queue to ask your question, *6 to subscribe to my newsletter. So we're going to keep going here. Thomas from Apple Valley. Thomas, what's the answer for you?
Hi, it's nice to talk to you again. I'm actually an engineer for the Union Pacific Railroad. I was wondering if you guys are going to get together and stop these 3-mile-long trains and the reduction of crews in the cab, because I've had problems because of PSR. I don't know if you know what PSR is. That's Precision Scheduled Railroading. That's where they cut all costs to help the hedge funds out, make more money off our stock. And they get let go of maintenance. They let go of maintenance away. They let go of a lot of other factors that play into safety. And they just had a big derailment Santa Fe did last week in Arizona. UP had one up in SEMA with a coal train last month. And yesterday, or on Monday, I lost my head end engine and my rear end engine, and thank God I wasn't on the whole pass, because I take this train up and down the hill, and I lost all my reservoir pressure. That would have happened on the hill without a conductor. The train would have just taken off down the hill. Are you guys going to be doing anything about that? And one last thing is, I see that they want to bring refugees over from Gaza. Are you guys going to be trying to stop that? Because a lot of those people there don't want to assimilate with the American way. That's all I got.
Excellent question. Excellent question. You know, that's the story you just told about the railroad is harrowing, and I'd love to get some more information about what you experienced. The oversight of the federal railway system is a congressional obligation, so you've come to the right place about that. And what we try and do, and we take the responsibility very seriously, is to try and balance the obligation to have a well-running and economically viable rail system against our obligation to have a safe rail system. And whenever we have things happen that demonstrate flaws in the safety systems for our rail systems, it means that something has slipped through the cracks of federal regulation and needs to be addressed. And you can see that that's happened a couple of times over the last few years with big, tragic railway accidents in the United States. And every time that happens, we have a collection of hearings on it and trying to get to the bottom of what went wrong and what needs to be done. So we are, to answer specifically your question, we are always on the lookout for people that are cutting corners that might impact safety. Because the potential for catastrophe when you've got this much freight moving that quickly through communities is horrendous. So that's an obligation that we take really seriously, and we're going to continue to do that. So to answer your question about the Palestinian refugees, yeah, that's just come up in the last day or two in some comments that have come out of the current administration. If you want my opinion, I'm not in favor of taking refugees from Palestine here. I don't think it makes any sense from a couple of different standpoints. The first is that the point that you made of cultural imbalance. There are countries around the Middle East that are much more appropriate for the acceptance of those refugees that are not taking them right now. And a good example is Egypt. Egypt, they've actually been a close partner of ours in trying to get humanitarian aid into Gaza, but they have not been a good partner in terms of accepting refugees. In fact, they try hard not to accept any refugees out of Gaza. And it's because they have the same concerns that we have, that they think that the cultural fit just isn't there. So I think that there are better solutions to solving that crisis than to have the Palestinians come here to the United States. That was a great question. All right, so we've got Deb from Crestline. Deb, what can I answer for you?
Are you speaking to me or in Ukaipa?
I'm sorry, it's who from Ukaipa?
Deb from Ukaipa?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I've got Crestline.
No.
Deb from Ukaipa. Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
This is good.
So many great questions being asked, and really I appreciate being on the call tonight. I was invited kind of randomly, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be here. My question has to do with AI. I work in a school district down here in Ukaipa, and I'm really concerned with the young people and the influence that AI is having on them. It's a scary concept. I responded no to having it being acceptable, but I'm not completely against it. What would your priorities or restrictions and limitations be for AI's future?
It's a great question. And I share your caution about it. In general, I am an AI optimist. I think that AI has the potential to greatly benefit our society, but there are some substantial drawbacks and downsides that we need to protect people against. And you've highlighted an excellent one of those, which is the potential impact on our young people. On the one hand, AI has the potential to be the greatest tool for the dissemination of human knowledge that our society has ever come up with. So it can be hugely empowering to our young people because it can share information with them on any topic that they want to learn about in whatever learning style is most effective for imparting knowledge to them. So in that sense, it's wonderful. But it also has the potential for making our youth even more antisocial than they have become already. Social media has been, I think in general, a pretty destructive influence on our youth. We've seen a lot of abuses of social media by the large tech companies who, frankly, sometimes care more about turning a profit than they do about the well-being of our children. And you've seen many psychological studies. It's proven that that's true. But AI has the potential to make that even worse. And we know we're going to be in trouble when our teenage children would rather chat with a large language model powered by AI than they would with a group of their peers. That's going to be a disastrous thing for our young people. So I think that there is a balance that needs to be achieved there. Let me tell you why my answer to the AI question. I can tell you because we've already closed the survey. But why my answer is number one, that I'm an AI optimist. Think about the fact that throughout the history of our country, every major economic expansion has been heralded by an increase in the productivity of the American workforce. You really cannot have one without the other. You increase the productivity of American workers, that increases output, it increases the size of our economy, and that increases prosperity. But in the last 6 years, the productivity of American workers has been in gradual decline. I think that AI could be the next big catalyst for the expansion of productivity, which would not only expand our economy, but create a rising wave of prosperity that literally lifts all the boats and gets our country on the next big surge of prosperity that increases the standard of living for everyone. So I am an optimist for AI, but we have to acknowledge the substantial hazards. And we also have to acknowledge the fact that it's going to be disruptive. Technological innovations are always disruptive, going all the way back to the printing press, but most recently the internet. But you can't look at the advent of the internet and say, on balance, that's been bad for society. No, I think on balance, brought us closer together each other. It's catalyzed some incredible technological advancements. It's been a good thing, but it hasn't been all good. There's been some downside too. I think that's going to be the case with AI. But that's why I'm so honored to be entrusted with responsibility of crafting a federal regulatory framework for AI because I believe that we need to achieve that balance. That's a great question. All right. Jeffrey from Apple Valley, what can I answer for you?
They did the fight and that will trust fire but don't get awarded. Which in America, we got like surprisingly that they test fire us for no reasons. I just like to know the reasons.
Okay, I didn't get all of that, but you're asking about FISA, and that's an excellent question. That was a recent vote where we were asked to reauthorize the FISA surveillance program. And let me tell you a little bit about FISA for people that might not know. FISA stands for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Authority. It's a program that was enacted after 9/11 to enable surveillance of foreigners on foreign territory. So this is not a program that allows any surveillance of Americans, and it's not a program that allows any surveillance of anyone who's on U.S. soil. It's only for foreigners located outside the country. But it has been absolutely vital in stopping attacks like 9/11 from occurring again, and it's one of the main reasons why we haven't had another 9/11. So periodically this comes up for renewal, and we were asked to renew it again. The problem is that there have been recently some really substantial abuses of FISA authority by the FBI and other intelligence agencies, and they have used FISA to, while they're conducting surveillance of foreigners, to also surveil American citizens that have been caught up in that. So, for example, if an American citizen sends an email to a foreign national who's under surveillance, they get caught up, and the American gets surveilled too. And the FBI has definitely abused their authority in that respect. But I know a lot of people have said that that FISA allows warrantless surveillance of Americans. I would say that is absolutely untrue. Every FISA surveillance has to be authorized by a FISA warrant. And there's a process for that. You go to FISA court, you have to show probable cause to a judge, and only then is the warrant granted. And again, it's not supposed to touch Americans' data at all. So the FISA reauthorization I voted for it because it has over 50 different reforms to rein in the abuse of FISA authority by intelligence agencies and to stop it being used from surveilling Americans unintentionally. I mean, really substantial things like requirements that every FISA search be logged with the name of the person who originated it, the requirement that every search be authorized by a supervisor, and one amendment that I voted for, which was an amendment by Chip Roy that says that the intelligence committees within Congress, both in the House and the Senate, now have the ability to appoint people to sit in front of the FISA court and listen to every single warrant that is requested, just to make sure that we are aware of efforts to get around the process and aware of anything that the intelligence agencies might be doing that's abusive. So I thought that was a reasonable balance, which is why I voted for it. And one more point, usually FISA is reauthorized for 5 years at a time. We changed the authorization to only be 2 years because we want to make absolutely certain that it's no longer being abused before we authorize it any longer. So we changed that down to 2 years. So on balance, I think that that was the right thing to do because FISA is, even given the way it's abused, it is still one of the most valuable tools that we have for preventing another 9/11 in this country and for making sure that we're aware of what foreigners are doing that has malicious intent. So I think it's got a useful purpose for that reason. All right, is this the last one? All right, last question, because I want to be respectful of people's time, and I know we're coming up on an hour here. Christine from Apple Valley. Christine, what can I answer for you?
Hi, I wanted to know if you are aware that disabled military cannot receive their VA disability pay
Yes, I'm very aware of that problem. That is a problem that I've been fighting to fix. And we have a bill called the Major Richard Starr Act, which would completely fix this problem. It's a bill that I co-sponsored. I co-sponsored the last Congress. We are going to continue to push to try and get this done. Sometimes the VA and our other federal agencies can be a little hidebound, and they have to be dragged kicking and screaming to do the right thing. But we have been successful in fixing these kinds of problems before. We had an act that we were finally successful in getting passed last year that got our servicemen and women finally eligible for medical care for their exposure to toxic respiratory problems coming from toxic burn pits that they experienced in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's something that people said we would never be able to get done. That was a bill that I co-sponsored, and we were able to get that across the finish line, and it's now current law. We're going to continue to fight on this until we get it done. But it's a problem that I'm very aware of. I take very seriously. But thank you for the question. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us on this virtual town hall. We may have set a record on the quality of the questions here. They were really excellent, informed questions, and it makes me very proud to represent such an engaged and informed constituency. I'll tell you that. If we didn't get to your question, please stay on the line when the town hall ends and leave a message for me with your name and your contact information, and we will get back to you and answer your question. I take that part of my job very seriously. We answer every single constituent inquiry, whether it comes in on the phone, email, through the website, heck, smoke signals. If we could answer those, we would. To give you an idea, I answer between 1,000 and 2,000 letters from constituents every week. 1,000 and 2,000 every week. So if this is another way of reaching me, if I didn't get to your question, stay on the line, leave us your contact information. We will respond to you and get your question answered. And I want to thank you very much for the honor of representing you in the House of Representatives, and remind you one more time, if you have a problem with any aspect of the federal government that I can help you with, would you please get in touch with my staff and let us go to work for you and to fight for you, because it's something that we take very seriously. So thanks, everyone. It's an honor to represent you in Washington, D.C. Have a great evening.
Yeah, right.